Welcome to CINEPRO, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The second season of the series Dexter starts about 38 days after the events of the previous season, and we currently see Dexter at the bowling alley playing with his friends including Angel and others. By the way, Dokes was also present, and the reason Dokes is there is to watch Dexter, not to play with them. God forbid. Dexter knows very well that Dokes is always watching him, and because of that, Dexter hasn't committed any murders for about 38 days, which has affected him psychologically. Dokes decides to leave the place and stop following Dexter, so Dexter feels free for the first time in a long time and decides to commit a new murder. Dexter goes to a sorcerer named Jimmy, and we learn that Dexter has been searching for Jimmy for a while because he knows Jimmy is a crazy killer who kills people who come to him for magic. Therefore, Jimmy is a killer and deserves to die, so Dexter decides to kill him. But something strange happens. Dexter simply doesn't kill Jimmy, and Dexter is very surprised by this. He asks himself if the period in which he didn't kill anyone has changed him. Honestly, Dexter can't find any answer right now, so he simply unties Jimmy and lets him go. After that, Dexter goes home and finds Deborah at the house. Since what happened to her when Rudy kidnapped her, Deborah has always been afraid and no longer sleeps alone. She always comes to sleep at her brother Dexter's place. This actually annoys Dexter quite a bit and makes him feel uncomfortable at home. The next day, Dexter goes to work, and when he arrives, Dokes comes and keeps bothering him, asking unnecessary questions. Dexter is very annoyed, but he can't comment on Dokes' actions so as not to make him more suspicious. After a short while, Deborah arrives at the police station, and we learn that this is her first day back at work since she was freed from Rudy. As soon as Maria sees Deborah has arrived, she goes straight to Esme, the new head of the department who replaced Maria. Maria asks Esme to give Deborah lighter work because her nerves are still shaken from what happened to her. Esme feels that Maria is giving her orders and wants to be head of the department again, so she talks to her in the worst possible way and tells her to mind her own business and let her decide whether Deborah should work or not. Then Esme asks Maria to go with a team to check out a body that was found near the sea. Maria takes a team including Dexter and they go to the body. There, Dexter starts examining the body, and at that moment a Mexican woman named Eva arrives with a little girl named Marcia. Eva says the dead man is her son Rafael and that he was killed by a very dangerous gang member named Chino. Seeing Eva and her daughter Marcia grieving for Rafael makes Dexter angry, and he decides his new victim will be Chino. But to do that, Dexter must be sure that Chino is really the killer. So Dexter goes to Deborah and asks her if she knows anything new about Chino since he's a registered criminal. Deborah tells Dexter that Chino is indeed a dangerous criminal and a killer. Here, Dexter is sure that Chino is indeed a killer and probably killed Rafael, so he decides Chino will be his new victim. After a while, Dokes arrives with Chino in custody. We learn that Dokes arrested Chino and is now interrogating him, with Dexter and everyone else watching. Dokes accuses Chino of killing Rafael based on Eva's statement, but Chino denies everything and tells Dokes that Eva is an addict and says anything under the influence of drugs. At that moment, Deborah quickly investigates Eva and unfortunately discovers she really is an addict. This disappoints everyone because it means the court will never rely on her testimony, so there are no charges against Chino and he will go free. This upsets everyone. On the other hand, at the same time, Rita is visiting her husband Paul in prison. Paul tells her that Dexter is the reason he's in prison. Dexter drugged him and put drugs on him, causing the police to arrest him as an addict. Paul tells her that Dexter set him up to get him into prison, and says the biggest proof is that when Dexter dragged Paul out of Rita's house to his car, one of Paul's shoes was left behind in Rita's house. The biggest proof of Paul's story is that Rita actually found that shoe a while ago, but she tells Paul now that he's lying and that Dexter deserved to do what he did, although Rita is a bit suspicious that Dexter really did do this. Back to Dexter's new victim. After a while, Dexter finds Chino, drugs him and ties him up to kill him, but Chino is strong and manages to free himself and escape from Dexter. Dexter is shocked that for the second time he couldn't kill his victim, and the problem is that Chino saw his face and could easily expose him. So Dexter decides he will kill Chino at any cost. But of course, Dexter won't kill Chino right now. He needs to plan how to do it first. Later, Dexter goes to Rita and finds her crying. She tells him that her husband Paul was killed in prison by some inmates he had problems with. It's clear that Rita feels very guilty because she could have gotten Paul out of prison if she had believed him when he asked for her help. But Dexter keeps comforting her, and in the end he leaves her and goes home. When he gets home, Deborah comes to him and tells him that the police have discovered corpses, skeletons and many things like that underwater, and it is clear that there is a new serial killer targeting victims and disposing of their bodies underwater. At this point, Dexter is terrified because my friend, what Deborah is saying means that the police have discovered the place where Dexter gets rid of his victims' bodies. And this means that it is very possible that Dexter could be exposed soon. Anyway, the next day, Dexter heads to a new crime scene. This time, the location is in the middle of the street, because people found a body dumped there today. The disaster is that as soon as Dexter sees the body, he discovers it is Eva's body. At that moment, Dexter immediately realizes that Chino set her up because she was going to testify against him, as we saw before. This makes Dexter's blood boil, and he feels guilty for letting Chino commit another crime and that he should have killed him from the start. Because of this, his desire for revenge increases more than ever before. Dexter continues his work at the crime scene, then leaves, deciding that he will go to Chino and settle the old score for real this time. But before he gets there, Dexter notices something strange. There is a car following him the entire way, never leaving him for a moment. Dexter stops his car to see who is watching him and why. To his surprise, it turns out to be the officer who has been tracking him. Dexter confronts him and tells him that what is happening is not normal, that he is being pushed for no reason when he hasn't done anything. Dexter doesn't wait for a response from the officer and leaves, postponing the idea until the next day, fearing he might get caught today. The next morning, Dexter is on his way to work when he gets a call from Astor, Rita and Paul's daughter. She tells him that her mother has been acting strange since the first day and has been crying. So he goes to check on her, and there he learns that Rita can't get over Paul's death and feels guilty, as if she was the reason for his death because she didn't help him get out of prison. Dexter tries to comfort her and tells her that it's not worth all this sadness. But his strange reaction and coldness make Rita suspicious and feel that he might be responsible in what happened to Paul, just as Paul had told her before. Despite this, Rita keeps quiet and Dexter leaves her and continues on to work. When he arrives at work, his colleague Masuka informs everyone that the feds have sent a new officer to investigate the recent sea crimes, meaning the investigation into Dexter's victims' bodies. This, of course, makes Dexter nervous. The important thing is, we find out that the federal officer assigned to the case is named Frank, who is well known for his work and has caught many dangerous serial killers. As soon as Dexter hears this name, he starts to worry, feeling that this man could be a big threat to him and might expose him. After a while, the police call in Chino for questioning about Eva's murder, but he provides evidence that he wasn't in the city at the time of the crime, so they have to release him since they have nothing to hold him with, even though everyone is sure he is the criminal. Later, Frank arrives at the station, holds a meeting with the team, and announces that he will be the new head of investigations and will choose a group from the station to help him, but he hasn't decided who exactly yet. He emphasizes that the killer they are looking for is more dangerous than Rudy. This makes Dexter tense and also reminds Deborah of her brother Rudy, and she is visibly sad. After that, Dexter goes to a colleague at the station and asks him for a tranquilizer gun and a syringe with a strong sedative. At night, Dexter follows Chino, who is currently celebrating somewhere. Dexter keeps tracking him for a long time until he leaves, and Dexter tries to shoot him with a tranquilizer dart to finish him off. But the surprise is that Chino expected this, and not only that, but Chino had also set up an ambush for Dexter. Suddenly, Chino appears and corners Dexter, but Dexter manages to escape with some difficulty and hides in the sewers, thus getting away from them. Afterwards, Dexter returns home and finds Rita waiting for him. During this time, she tells him she wants to hold a memorial for Paul and wants him to be there with her. Dexter agrees, even though he doesn't really want to, but he also doesn't want to upset Rita, so he agrees. The next morning, Deborah and Officer Angel go to the neighborhood where Eva was killed to investigate and talk to anyone there. But no one cooperates with them because they are afraid of Chino, knowing that if they side with the police against Chino, they will end up like Eva. So everyone keeps their distance and no one helps. Because of this, Deborah gets frustrated and suddenly sees a boy named Joey scribbling on the police car, writing words attacking them. Deborah explodes and chases Joey until she catches him, points her gun at him, and pins him down. All this shows that Deborah is not acting normal these days after what she went through with Rudy. Obviously, her trauma is affecting her behavior and this could impact her work in the future. Anyway, Deborah tells Joey to confess about Chino and his gang or she will hurt him. Joey gets scared and cooperates, which makes Deborah happy. On the other side, Dexter goes with Rita and her kids to attend Paul's memorial in the church as Rita asked. During the service, Dexter starts to imagine Rudy and has a conversation with him, and we understand that since Dexter killed Rudy, he has been imagining him all the time. After the memorial, Dexter goes back to the station and discovers that the police have arrested all of Chino's men thanks to Joey's testimony. But Chino himself is still free and no one has been able to arrest him yet. This relieves Dexter a bit because he wants to get rid of him himself. Of course, if Chino gets arrested, he could expose Dexter. At this time, Maria arrives at the station and receives an important letter. Instead of delivering it to Esme as required, Maria opens and reads it, discovering that Esme is using the work phone for personal call. Maria confronts her, warns her, and makes it clear that she will start putting pressure on her because she wants to get rid of her and take back the leadership of the station. This also reveals a new side of Maria's character, her ambition, which we didn't know about before. That same night, Chino goes to the area where Joey lives to settle the score and get rid of him just like Eva. But as Chino is about to do it, Dexter suddenly appears and tranquilizes Chino. Then Dexter takes him to his hideout, where he ties him up very well to make sure he doesn't escape. And after that, Dexter takes a blood sample from him as he does with all his victims, then disposes of him and finally gets rid of him. Here, Dexter discovers that this is the first time he has killed someone since his brother died, so he feels relieved, as if life has returned to him or become normal again. After dumping the body parts in the sea, but this time in a new place completely different from the one the police are currently monitoring and discovered a few days ago. After that, Dexter goes to see Rita, who had called him earlier. At this time, Rita confronts Dexter with the shoe he dropped the day he pulled her out of her house and tells him that she is now almost sure that he really is the reason for everything that happened to Paul. Dexter then confesses and tells her that he did indeed drug him with heroin and sent him back to prison in order to protect her and the kids from Paul and his evil. At that moment, when Dexter told the truth, Rita understood what he did, but she was surprised about where he got the heroin from in the first place. Dexter lies to her and tells her that he used to be an addict and had some hidden away from that time. Rita believes Dexter and decides to help him get over his addiction, not knowing that Dexter's real addiction isn't drugs at all but killing. The next day, Dexter actually goes to an addicts meeting, and it's clear he's only doing it to convince Rita, not because he wants to change or feels guilty. He didn't even want to go to the meeting in the first place. At the same time, Dexter notices a girl sitting there who can't take her eyes off him. This girl, by the way, is named Lila, but even though Dexter notices her stares, he doesn't pay her any attention and quietly leaves the place. Afterwards, he goes to Rita and tells her he attended the meeting. Rita starts asking him about the medallion they get on the first day, but since he left before the meeting ended, he didn't get it. This makes Rita suspect that he's lying, so she kicks him out of the house. The next day, Dexter goes to work as usual, and the whole team is watching a TV interview that Deborah did, where she revealed a lot of information about the body parts found in the sea. This information shouldn't have been made public at this time, so that the killer wouldn't be alerted. Deborah's unprofessional behavior annoyed everyone in the department. After the interview, Matthews arrives with Frank and announces the names of those who will work on the new serial killer case. They choose Angel and Deborah, and exclude Dokes, who is clearly upset but can't say anything. As for Dexter, as usual, he doesn't care and leaves them to their problems. He goes to a car dealership, but the goal isn't a car, it's a man named Roger, who works there and is accused of killing women. Dexter suspects him and wants to make sure if he's the killer or not, because if he is, when Dexter gets there, he talks to Roger normally, and without Roger noticing, Dexter manages to steal a comb with Roger's hair on it. Dexter stole the comb to analyze his DNA and find out if he's the killer. By the way, the killer who murdered the women recently left DNA at one of the crime scenes. While Dexter is there, he likes a car and says he'll buy it. The next day at work, Masuka tells Dexter that he is part of the team investigating the body parts case, and they take him to the tent with the bone. This is the first time Dexter finds himself surrounded by the remains of his own victims, and naturally he feels tense and thinks someone might discover him at any moment. Anyway, Dexter goes to his second addicts meeting, and this time he stays until the end, unlike the last time. After the meeting ends, Lila, who had noticed him before, approaches him and asks him out of the blue if they can hang out together. Dexter is surprised but agrees, and they spend time together. While they're talking, Lila tells him she suspects he's not really an addict and that he's coming to the meetings for another reason. Dexter feels Lila is too smart and decides to stay away from her in the meetings to avoid any problem. Dexter then goes back to Rita and tells her he doesn't plan to go to those meetings again. Rita gets upset and tells Dexter that he doesn't care about anything and that he's selfish. In the end, Rita kicks him out of the house for the second time. Dexter then meets Roger again and gets a tissue with another sample to analyze, because so far he hasn't been able to match the DNA from the hair he took. Dexter does his analysis and confirms that Roger is indeed the killer of the women. Dexter gets to work, kidnaps Roger, takes him to his secret place and follows his usual protocol. He takes a blood sample for his collection, then kills Roger without any mercy or sympathy. After Dexter is done, he goes to another meeting. There, Dexter talks to the people about his addiction, saying he's addicted to heroin and shares his experience with heroin addiction. After Dexter talks, he honestly feels a bit relieved, as if he's gotten a lot off his chest. He decides to continue attending these meetings because they actually make him feel better and improve his mood. But the funny thing is, Dokes had been following him and saw him there, so he confronts him and says, "I suspected you were a former addict." He reassures Dexter that he won't tell anyone as long as he's trying to get better, and then leaves. This makes Dexter happy, because now Dokes thinks Dexter was an addict, and that's why he always acted strange. Dokes will stop following him, which will allow Dexter to commit his crimes more easily. The next day, Dexter goes to see Rita and tells her that the car he bought from Roger is a gift for her and the kid. Rita is happy and forgets all her problems with Dexter, thanking him of course. She has to thank him since he bought her a car. Dexter reassures her that he will keep going to the meetings and she even drives him there herself. While there, Rita sees Lila and is surprised, so she asks Dexter about her. Dexter tells her that Lila is his sponsor who will be helping him with his recovery. This makes Frank suspect that the new serial killer is targeting only criminals, and that he has a principle making him harder to catch than other killers. In general, my friend, what happened makes Frank even more of a danger to Dexter, because he could easily expose him. Anyway, in the morning, Dexter wakes up and decides to visit Rita. When he gets to Rita's place, she tells him that her mother Gail is coming to visit her today. And with her understanding, her mother Gail didn't like Paul at all. That's why she had cut her off for many years. Dexter tells Rita that he could come and meet her mother and try to make a good impression so that she would like him and not hate him like she did Paul. Rita agrees and thanks him very much. Afterwards, Dexter goes to work, and at work Dexter is very focused on Frank and the rest of the team, always looking around to make sure no one suspects anything. Suddenly Dexter sees Masuka going over to Frank and telling him he has something very important regarding the bodies that were found in the sea. Dexter starts to get nervous, his mind spinning with worry, and this tension makes Dexter want to know exactly what Masuka discovered, whether he might be getting close to figuring things out or even exposing Dexter. Under this pressure, Dexter decides to escape it all for a bit and goes to see Lila to talk to her. When Dexter arrives, he finds that she's turned her house into a kind of art workshop, full of strange statues and metal pieces. When Lila sees him surprised, she suggests they go out for a walk, since he might not like the place. Dexter agrees without thinking, but the shock comes when he realizes that Lila isn't going out for a walk. She's collecting things from the street, like brass bells, small discarded items, and things like that. When Dexter asks her why she's doing this, she tells him she uses these things in her art and in the sculptures she makes. But what Lila does and her strange ways don't appeal to Dexter, so he decides to cut her off completely, feeling she's a bit crazy. Meanwhile, Dexter moves on to a new crime scene, where Dokes and Maria are present. Dexter finds that the victim this time is a woman killed by a gunshot, and from the first look he realizes the killer isn't an amateur. It was the work of a real professional. Everyone starts searching the area, and Dokes discovers that the woman was married to a man who used to be in the army, and strangely, her husband was in the same unit as Dokes back in the day. Dokes starts to suspect the husband and decides to look for him first. Later, they all return to the station. Dokes tells Maria that he spoke to an old colleague, who connected him to someone who knows the suspected husband. After Dokes gets the information, he leaves Maria and rushes to meet the guy. But when Dokes arrives, he finds that the person who got there before him is the husband himself, who knows Dokes is investigating the case and decided to confront him. Dokes' old colleague asks Dokes to help the husband escape the country before he gets caught, but Dokes refuses because he's an honest man committed to the law, even with his closest friends. Dokes pulls his gun and tries to arrest him, but Dokes' friend also pulls a gun and is about to shoot Dokes, but Dokes is faster and kills him instantly. Meanwhile, Dexter is in the lab when Esme comes in carrying her fiancé's shirt, suspecting he's cheating on her. She asks Dexter to analyze it to see if there's any evidence, like hair or something, to prove he's cheating. But Dexter sends her on a wild goose chase, telling her that's Masuka's job and he can't do it, and so on. Dexter isn't trying to get Masuka in trouble. He just wants to distract Masuka from his own case before he gets exposed. Esme then goes to Masuka and asks him to do the analysis. After that, Dexter goes to meet Rita and her mother Gail. Dexter greets Gail but senses that she's upset with him and doesn't trust or feel comfortable around him. Dexter also feels uneasy around her, but nothing happens between them for now, and the day passes. The next day, Dexter sits with Deborah and asks her about the bodies found in the sea. She tells him that Masuka found rocks with algae on them, and that this could help them figure out exactly where the bodies were in the sea. Deborah also tells him that they're bringing in a marine biologist to examine the algae and determine the location. This is the moment when Dexter really starts to panic, feeling like everything is closing in and he's about to be exposed. Later, Dexter goes to work, and while he's there he sees Esme getting into a big argument with Masuka because Masuka told her there's nothing on the shirt to prove cheating, even though she was convinced otherwise. Maria comes and takes Esme away before the situation gets worse. Then Matthews comes in having learned what happened, and tells Maria that she's going to be reinstated as head of the department. Maria is very happy, but the shocking part is that she's actually having an affair with Esme's fiancé. It turns out she did all this to get Esme distracted and away from work, making her fiancé cheat on Esme just to drive her crazy and get her to leave, so Maria could get her position back. When Esme is actually fired and Maria gets what she wants, we see that she coldly ends her relationship with Esme's fiancé, showing a very bad and scary side of her character. After that, Dexter goes to see Lila and thinks about talking to her again, but finds her behavior even stranger than before, so he decides to cut ties with her completely. But then, unexpectedly, Lila shows up at Dexter's work and talks to him alone. Dexter is happy that Lila came to see him at work, and since he's attracted to her, he completely forgets himself and shows her the bodies he's working on, the same victims the police found in the sea. But instead of being scared, Lila is fascinated by all of it. This is the moment Dexter realizes that Lila really is different and decides to keep seeing her because he feels she's like him. At night, Dexter goes to the tent where the bodies are stored and deliberately sabotages the cooling system so everything inside is destroyed and no one can work on the bodies anymore. This means no one can discover his secret. The next day when the team arrives, they find all the bodies ruined. But the surprise is that Masuka says the rocks with the algae are perfectly fine. They weren't stored in the same place. At that moment, Dexter feels like he's back to square one, that everything he did was pointless, and that they could easily catch him at any moment because of those rocks. Dexter is truly terrified. The next morning, Dexter goes to a new crime scene. This time, the victim is the owner of a comic book store, and the scene there was truly terrifying. Anyway, Dexter looks around, examines the place, and spends a long time at the scene. But Batista and Maria stay as they are, turning everything upside down, searching for any lead that could connect them to the killer or help them find out why he committed this crime. After a while, Dexter tells Maria that the victim used to draw and write comics, and there were problems between him and a man named Korn, who worked in the same field. He was also a comic artist. Korn's car was parked nearby at the time of the incident. At this point, Maria thinks about what Dokes said, takes it into consideration, and decides they will keep a close eye on Korn because he might be the killer. But when Dokes tells her he'll go alone to meet Korn, Maria gets worried and refuses. Not only that, but Maria insists on going with him because she suspects Dokes might act rashly as usual and take out Korn, so she decides to go watch him herself. Anyway, the two of them stand in front of Korn's house, watching him. During the surveillance, Maria tries to convince Dokes to see a psychiatrist to help him control himself because Maria feels his behavior is not normal. Of course, Dokes refuses strongly and as usual turns the tables on Maria, starts arguing with her for no reason, and tells her, hinting that she's the one who needs a doctor after having an illicit relationship with Esme's fiancé, just so Esme would leave her job and Maria could get her position back. Maria gets very tense and asks Dokes how he found out and if someone told him. Dokes says he just suspected her from the beginning, nothing more, and now with her foolishness, she confirmed his suspicions and opened up. Then Dokes tells her he doesn't care about what she did, but from now on each of them should stay out of the other's work and personal life. Maria is of course forced to agree because she doesn't want to be exposed. They continue their surveillance as usual until Korn arrives in his car, gets out, and before he can enter his house, Maria and Dokes attack and arrest him on the spot. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Dexter is in a session or meeting with Lila, and the session is so boring that Dexter literally falls asleep out of boredom. In his sleep, Dexter dreams he is a child inside the container with his mother, but this time the dream changes. A superhero appears and saves Dexter's mother. When the superhero removes his mask, it turns out to be adult Dexter himself. That's when Dexter wakes up. Dexter then tells Lila for the first time that his mother was murdered in front of him when he was a child. Lila is deeply affected by Dexter's words about his mother and tells him he should look for those who did it, confront them, and get justice for his mother, even if it's just by talking to them without hurting anyone. But at least he needs to talk to them and get everything off his chest. Dexter likes this idea very much, and says he'll take it seriously and do as Lila suggested. The next day, Dexter goes to see Rita as usual, but is surprised by the arrival of her mother, Gail, who bluntly tells him she feels he is a danger to her daughter and might turn out like Paul. Dexter is upset but doesn't respond to Gale and quietly leaves. After that, Dexter goes to work and enters the archives to look for his mother's case. When he opens the case file, he finds out that the people who killed his mother were three. One is dead, one is in prison, and the third is still free to this day. Since Dexter can't get to the dead or the imprisoned one, he decides to take revenge on the one who is still free. When Dexter listens to the case recordings, he discovers that his mother used to work with a gang and at the same time was informing on them to Harry, Dexter's adoptive father. So basically she was working as an informant for Harry. Dexter is shocked because he realizes his mother died because of her relationship with Harry. Surely the gang found out about her and decided to kill them, which is what made Harry feel guilty and led him to raise Dexter. All of this upsets and drives Dexter crazy. Later, Lila visits Dexter and asks what he did, so Dexter tells her that one of his mother's killers is still alive and that he plans to meet him. Lila gets excited and asks to go with him. Dexter isn't too happy about it but agrees so he won't upset her. Meanwhile, Frank is meeting with his team, informing them that the algae found on the sea bodies only appears in 3 ports, and asks them to monitor these ports. After the meeting, Deborah goes to tell Dexter everything that happened and about the surveillance plan. This terrifies Dexter because one of those ports is where he keeps his boat, and if anyone finds his boat there, they'll know he's the killer. Dexter feels like he's slowly falling apart and about to be exposed. To clear his mind, Dexter travels with Lila to the city where the killer is, and they check into a hotel. When Dexter arrives at the hotel, Rita calls him to ask why his attitude toward her has changed so much. Dexter tells her what happened with her mother, and that this made him distance himself from Rita to avoid unnecessary problems. Everything Dexter says makes Rita very angry, and she goes to confront her mother, telling her to leave them alone and stay out of their lives. Gale is upset but stays silent and doesn't object to what Rita says. Meanwhile, Dexter and Lila are still at the hotel. Dexter takes advantage of Lila being in the bathroom and sneaks out alone to meet the killer. Dexter goes to the bar owned by the man who killed his mother and waits until the bar is completely empty. After a while, the killer finally arrives, and Dexter sits with him and tells him he's the son of the woman he killed. Dexter then loses control and starts beating the killer until he gets him to talk. The killer tells Dexter that he and his mother were working in a gang, and that his mother betrayed them with a cop and started telling the cop everything happening in the gang. From what the killer says, Dexter understands that Harry loved his mother, and realizes that Harry wasn't just a nice cop who adopted him. He actually loved his mother before that, and is probably his real father because of an illicit affair. Dexter also confirms that his mother's death was actually caused by Harry, who made her work as an informant in the gang, and in the end she was brutally killed. All of this deeply affects Dexter. He keeps beating the killer, unable to control himself and intending to finish him off. But suddenly Lila calls at that moment and Dexter tells her he's okay because he's going back to his addiction. Of course, Dexter's intention with the word addiction here is the addiction to killing, which he would return to if he killed this man. Meanwhile, Lila thinks Dexter is talking about drug addiction and keeps begging and asking him not to do it. So Dexter actually agrees and doesn't kill the killer. After that, Dexter went to the hotel, and at that moment, you could say that Lila felt very comfortable with him. Consequently, she started telling him her life story and told him that she was once married to a drug dealer, but he was a disgusting person who didn't love her. When he hurt her and she felt she couldn't continue with him, she set his house on fire without knowing he was inside, as she was only trying to make him angry, not to kill him, but he died in the fire. At that moment, Dexter was very happy to find someone like him, feeling that Lila liked killing too. So Dexter asked her if she regretted what she did, and Lila quickly replied that she did not regret. This made Dexter feel that he could really trust Lila, and he was about to tell her the truth that he was a killer, but he felt he wasn't ready yet, so he stayed silent and didn't say anything. Then the two of them returned to their city, and the first thing Dexter did when he got back was go to Rita. The surprise was that Gale was there, treated him well and told him she wanted him to marry Rita. Of course, this was a joyful moment for Dexter, but the happiness didn't last when she said she would live with them. At that moment, Dexter got very annoyed because he realized that Gale didn't love Dexter and wanted to stay with them to watch him. All of this annoyed Dexter even more, so at night he went to the marina and started searching his boat to see if there was any blood or anything that could incriminate him. After Dexter's search, he found the boat clean, but the real problem was that there was a camera recording everything Dexter was doing there, and it's not known who those recordings will reach or what will happen next, but all of it was recorded. The next day, you see him going to work looking very exhausted because he didn't sleep at all that night, thinking about the recordings he heard about his mother and Harry. In general, when he arrives at the station, you see that it's very obvious how strangely tired he looked. By the way, Dokes takes advantage of the situation and goes to ask a strange question, saying, "Has your brother ever tried drugs or been an addict?" At that moment, Deborah was surprised by Dokes' words and told him that Dexter has never been near any of those things and insisted that Dexter could never be an addict because he doesn't go near that stuff at all. At that point, Dokes feels that Dexter is hiding something bigger and must have lied about the addiction to cover up something more serious. This brings back his suspicion, so we're back to square one, and Dokes decides again to investigate Dexter and uncover his secret. After that, Dexter goes out with Frank and they're heading on a mission where they meet a man named Jim. Jim tells them he was attacked by a strange person who claimed to be the serial killer who kills people he finds at sea. But the attack didn't continue, and Jim is still alive. When Dexter hears the story, he starts to suspect that someone is imitating him and trying to act like they are Dexter. Anyway, after that, Dexter goes to the crime scene to search the place and look for any evidence that could lead him to the person imitating him and stealing his identity. But unfortunately, the place is clean and there's no clear evidence. Later that night, Dexter goes with Lila to Rita's house, and they meet Rita and her mother. During this, Rita meets Lila and feels she's a calm and respectable girl, and doesn't say anything about her relationship with Dexter, and the evening passes normally. After they finish dinner, Dexter goes alone to the station, wanting to find a way to erase the recordings that show him at the marina checking on his boat. But the problem is that when Dexter arrives, he finds that the devices in the room are locked up well and there's no way he can get to them. So Dexter is forced to leave everything and go. After that, Dexter returns home with Rita. Then he finds a message on his phone from Lila. In the message, Lila says that she enjoyed their time together, especially the day they went to the place of the person who caused his mother's death. Of course, Rita hears this message, connects all the dots, and understands that Dexter is cheating on her with Lila. Rita's expression literally changes to anger, and she tells Dexter that their relationship is over and leaves him without saying another word. The next day at work, there's a big meeting at the station, and Frank tells everyone that the attacker is imitating the serial killer everyone is talking about. He also says that if things continue like this and no one catches this person, he'll have to hand the case over completely to the Fed. This is what scares Dexter the most, because he knows that if the feds get involved, he'll be very exposed and they might find out he's the serial killer. So Dexter decides to solve the problem himself by stopping the person imitating him. Then Angel brings a very important piece of information, saying that Jim was involved in an old incident where an elderly woman and her son Bruce were victims, and Bruce is probably the one who tried to take revenge on Jim. As soon as he hears that name, he orders everyone to look for Bruce and reach him at any cost. After that, Dexter returns to his office and finds Dokes listening to the old recordings that Dexter took from the archive. At that moment, Dexter is driven crazy by Dokes' actions, so he decides to go and complain to Maria. He actually goes to Maria, and she tells him there's no need for an official complaint and that she will handle Dokes herself and make him stop bothering Dexter with his suspicious action. Maria then asks Dexter to take a break for a few hours and stay at the station to relax his nerves. Dexter agrees with Maria, even though he doesn't want to leave the station at all right now. But in any case, he leaves to go to Lila. There for the first time, he tells her that he loves her. Strangely, after he leaves Lila, Rita calls him and asks to meet. In summary, Dexter returns to the station and finds out that Bruce has been arrested. But after the investigation, Frank can't pin anything on him, so he has to let him go. At that moment, Dexter doesn't waste any time and immediately sets off the fire alarm to clear out the station. After that, he goes to the room with the recordings and erases all the evidence that could have exposed him. Then Dexter goes to Bruce's house and waits there until he arrives. Without any introductions, Dexter ties Bruce up and asks him about the murders. Bruce thinks that the person in front of him is the serial killer he's been imitating, so he admits that he did kill the people. This is the moment Dexter was waiting for to make sure he really deserves to die. So after confirming his identity, Dexter calmly kills him. Then the police arrive and find Bruce's body. Frankie concludes that the real killer killed Bruce, so no one would imitate him again. This makes Frankie decide to keep the case to himself and not hand it over to the feds, which gives Dexter some relief. Afterwards, Dexter goes to Rita and confesses that he cheated on her. Upon hearing this, Rita breaks down and tells him that their relationship is over for good and asks him to leave her life completely. Dexter doesn't respond and silently leaves, but unexpectedly Dexter is happy because he has finally left Rita and will go his own way with Lila. The first thing he does after leaving is go straight to Lila. The next morning, Dexter goes to work as usual, and before entering his office he meets Angel, who tells him that a city newspaper received a letter today from someone claiming to be the killer. This put the whole station to work on the letter, trying to find anything in it that could help them catch the killer. Dexter pretends to be interested in the matter and encourages Angel to keep working on it. But the surprise is that Angel doesn't know that Dexter himself wrote the letter and sent it to the newspaper to distract the police and get them off his back. And indeed, Dexter gets what he wants. As the whole police force gets busy with the letter, led by Frank, who gets very involved with it, but none of them find anything, which is exactly what Dexter wanted. In the midst of all this, Frank notices that the letter contains details only someone working inside the police would know, so he starts to suspect that the killer is one of them. At the same time, there's a new crime scene, and this time the victim is a little girl named Betsy. Her stepfather is at the house and is the only suspect in the crime, accused of killing Betsy. At this point, Dexter goes to examine the crime as usual, and uses the opportunity to divert suspicion from himself. He comes up with a plan to make Dokes waste time with someone who has nothing to do with the case. So he goes to examine Betsy's stepfather and discovers he's innocent, but tells Dokes that he is the killer. Dokes believes him and takes the stepfather to the station and interrogates him for a long time. But the stepfather doesn't say a word because he's truly not the killer. This makes the situation more and more confusing, and Dokes can't understand why Dexter said the stepfather was the killer, when he's not. The important thing is that Dexter prepares his report, stating that the stepfather is innocent, and leaves it on Dokes' desk, but Dokes doesn't notice. Then Dexter goes to Maria and asks her why they are interrogating the stepfather when he's innocent. Maria is surprised and asks what he means. Dexter tells her he wrote a clear report on Dokes' desk, proving beyond a doubt that the stepfather is innocent, and that Dokes seems not to read reports at all and just works on his own with great negligence. As soon as Maria hears this from Dexter, she gets angry, goes to Dokes, stops the interrogation and asks him why he's interrogating an innocent man. Dokes is surprised and says that Dexter told him the man was guilty, but Maria understands that Dexter wrote in the report that he was innocent. Dokes realizes that he has lost in the game, and Dexter played him very well and managed to trick him and expose him well. By the way, this exposed you and all your secrets. Dexter's reaction was very strange, because without any explanation he hits Dokes and leaves. But Dokes gets angry and chases after Dexter and keeps hitting him in front of everyone at the station. Of course everyone was surprised and didn't understand, and Internal Affairs comes and stops what's happening and decides to suspend Dokes from work temporarily. This makes Dexter very happy because he got rid of Dokes, even if only temporarily. After that, we see that Dexter's relationship with Lila is progressing much faster, and they are going out together a lot and are happy to be getting closer. On the other hand, we see that Rita's mother is treating the kids in a harsh way, making them study all day as if she's taking revenge on them, not teaching them. This of course annoys the kids a lot, and even the mother. One time, Cody calls Dexter and asks him to come to the school with him because he's going to give a presentation and doesn't want his grandmother to come with him because he doesn't like her at all. Dexter, who loves Cody, agrees. But Gail takes the phone and hangs up as soon as she realizes it's Dexter on the line. After that, we see Dexter sitting with Lila, telling her that he's going to school with Cody today. Lila gets upset and feels like he could easily leave her and go back to Rita. Speaking of Rita, we see that she finds her mother punishing Cody for what he did, which makes Rita angry and she tells her mother to leave the house immediately. Gail agrees, sadly saying she won't bother them again, and leaves. The next day, Dexter goes with Rita and Cody to the school, attends the presentation, and they are all unnaturally happy. At this time, Lila is going crazy because Dexter isn't answering her, so she sets fire to the place where she lives, burning all the statues and things she loved. Then she calls Dexter, tells him there's been a fire, and surprises him at the house. Dexter gets worried, leaves Rita, and goes to Lila. When he arrives, he finds her pretending to be about to die. At this point, we understand that Lila has a major mental disorder and many psychological issues, to the extent that she burned down her whole house just so Dexter wouldn't leave her. We still don't know where her strange behavior will lead, but it's clear it won't end well. The next day, we see Dexter waking up in his house, and things seem calm today. But this calm doesn't last long because we see Lila still at his house. Lila is staying there until her house is fixed, and it feels like she's forcing herself into Dexter's life, as if she's become a part of it against his will. Deborah is also there, as usual, but it's clear she can't stand the situation at all, and gets angry when she finds Lila wearing her jacket. She can't stand Lila at all, so she leaves without saying a word. At this point, Dexter tries to understand from Lila when she plans to leave. Lila tells him she can't leave now or even soon because the insurance hasn't agreed to fix her house yet. Dexter is surprised, but as usual he doesn't comment and lets things go as they are. After that, Dexter suddenly finds an old toy in his bag that belonged to Cody, Rita's son. Dexter is surprised that the toy ended up with him, but decides to go give it to the boy. When he tries to tell Lila that he's going to Rita's, she gets upset and tries to stop him, telling him not to go to Rita because it's definitely a plan to get him back. But Dexter doesn't care and leaves without listening to her. We start to feel that Dexter is beginning to hate Lila and is starting to miss Rita again. After a while, we see Dexter at Rita's house, giving Cody the toy and spending some time with them, but the atmosphere isn't good at all. Rita talks to Dexter and tells him she doesn't want to see him again and leaves him standing there without any response. Dexter is surprised by Rita's drastic change and leaves. After that, Dexter returns to the station and finds the atmosphere tense, because Frank gathered the officers and told them he's starting to suspect that the killer they're looking for is among them. That's why a federal team is coming to review all the old cases. Of course, everyone gets upset, especially Deborah and the officers who feel that Frank is indirectly accusing all of them, but no one does anything, and everyone agrees with Frank in silence. A little later, Dexter arrives at the station and Angel and Masuka meet him. They tell him what happened and what Frank is planning to do. Dexter inside starts to worry because the circle of suspicion has become much smaller and is getting closer to him, but he tries to act normal so no one can discover or catch him. After that, Frank calls Dexter and tells him he wants to talk to him about the Rodrigo case, who was accused of murder and got off because of the blood report that Dexter himself made. Later, Rodrigo was killed by the serial killer Dexter, as we know. Frank suspects that the report was deliberately wrong and asks Dexter why he did that. Dexter quickly replies, explaining that it was just a mistake, not intentional. Then Frank gives the same case to Deborah, telling her to investigate it, and at the same time asks her to go to lunch with him. Deborah is happy and agrees, and there's some light chemistry between them, and we feel they're getting closer. After that, Dexter goes back to Lila and tries to find out why the insurance company suspects her of burning down her own house. He also tells her that he too suspects her because he noticed strange things at the house that make him think she really did set the fire. Of course, Lila denies it, but Dexter is suspicious and starts to feel unsafe with Lila and sees her as crazy, unlike Rita. Anyway, Dexter doesn't waste time and goes back to the station and gives Frank the Rodrigo file, which confirms to Frank that Dexter was the one who got Rodrigo acquitted. Of course, Dexter did that on purpose so he could kill Rodrigo himself, but Dexter doesn't tell Frank that now and pretends it was an innocent mistake and leaves. After that, Dexter starts feeling that everything is collapsing around him, so he decides to stay away from Lila completely because he feels she's contributing to his downfall more and more. But suddenly Lila calls and asks where he's going. Dexter lies and tells her he's going bowling with his colleagues at the station, so Lila asks to go with him, and he feels forced to agree so she doesn't suspect where he's really going. By the way, Dexter was actually on his way to commit a new crime at that time. Anyway, after not too long they actually go to the bowling alley, and there Dexter tries to act normal, pretending that everything is fine. After they finish and leave the bowling alley, suddenly a strange man appears and attacks Dexter with a knife. Dexter barely manages to escape, and the man runs away from the place. Of course, Lila is surprised and doesn't understand anything. After that, Dexter goes back with Lila and tells her that the man who just tried to kill him is the same man who killed his mother, whom Dexter had confronted before but refused to kill. At this point, Lila tries to comfort him, and Dexter feels temporary relief, but he decides to take revenge on that man. Indeed, he kidnaps him, ties him up, and kills him with a chainsaw, similar to the one his mother was killed with by that man and his accomplices a long time ago. After Dexter finishes, his curiosity leads him to open the man's wallet, where he finds a piece of paper with the name and address of the bowling alley where Dexter had been. Dexter realizes immediately, without much thought, that Lila is the one who reported him and gave the man the address, since nobody else knew about this except Lila, because Dexter had told her. This makes Dexter furious because Lila did exactly something like that, but everything will become clear later. At the same time, Rita returns home and discovers that the door is open, so she suspects someone broke into the apartment. She calls Dexter and tells him everything. At that moment, Dexter looks at his house keys and finds Rita's key missing, so he realizes that Lila is the one who stole it and definitely broke into Rita's place. Immediately, Dexter goes to Lila and asks her for the keys, She gives them to him. Terrified, Dexter tells her that he knows she went to Rita's. Lila admits that she suspected he was cheating on her there, so she decided to see for herself and stole the key. Dexter also finds out from her that she gave his address to the man who tried to kill him, so he would try to kill him. After Dexter survives, he feels he needs her more, and needs her comfort, so she will be able to get closer and closer to him. All of this makes Dexter lose his temper when he finds out it was all because of Lila, and he threatens her that if she goes near Rita or anyone else again, she will see a side of him she has never seen before. Lila is terrified and doesn't respond to Dexter. At the same time, we see Dokes meeting with Maria, and Maria apologizes for having to suspend him from work after all the problems he got into. She offers him a job in a security company, and Dokes agrees. By the way, Dokes, because of everything that happened and the way the feds looked at him because of his actions with Dexter, they decided to investigate him and suspend him from work. Currently, he has no money at all, so he has to take a job like this. Anyway, Dokes then goes to Frank, who brings up the subject of Rodrigo. Dokes is surprised and tells him that he wasn't the one who got Rodrigo off the hook. Frank explains that he wasn't the one who cleared Rodrigo, but Dexter did, and then Rodrigo was killed. At that moment, Dokes immediately realizes that Dexter is behind the whole thing, and is probably the serial killer and got Rodrigo out just to kill him himself, exactly as happened. Based on this suspicion, Dokes goes to Dexter's house and searches. Here comes the shock. Dokes finds the blood slide box that Dexter kept as samples from the people he killed before. Dokes is shocked and realizes his suspicions about Dexter were right all along and he wasn't crazy as everyone thought. At the same time, Deborah and Angel are investigating the same Rodrigo case and reach a neighbor of Rodrigo, who tells them he saw Rodrigo getting into a car with someone and then disappearing. They get the car's number and discover it was impounded at the station at the time the crime took place, which confirms Frank's suspicion that the killer is one of the officers, as he suspected from the beginning. Of course, we know that the one who did this is Dexter, not anyone else. Frank asks Maria and Angel to keep silent until they know who exactly the killer is. Everyone agrees. The next day, we see Dexter standing in front of Rita's house, and it's clear he spent the night there to protect her and her kids from Lila, who seems to have lost her mind and is fixated on Rita and her family and could easily harm them. Rita wakes up, goes down and finds Dexter outside. She asks him what he's doing there, and Dexter tells her he's just making sure they're okay, then leaves. But before getting in his car, he sees two of Frank's men watching them from a distance, which worries him. But as usual, Dexter tries to ignore what he saw, gets in his car and was planning to go to the cabin where he killed the man who killed his mother. But when he thinks about it and remembers people are watching him, he decides to change direction and go home instead of drawing more attention. At the same moment, we see that Dokes has left the country and gone to Haiti. There, Dokes meets an old friend and tells him he has some blood samples he wants analyzed, away from the authority. Dokes' goal is to find out if these samples match the serial killer's victims, and if so, he will know the truth that Dexter is the killer. Dokes agrees with his friend to come to him soon with the samples and leaves. Back to Dexter, who goes to the station. When he enters, all the officers are gathered, so he asks why they're all together. He probably knows who the killer is and doesn't need anyone working with him. When Dexter hears this, he starts connecting what they're saying with the surveillance he saw and begins to suspect that Frank has found him out and knows he's the serial killer. When Dexter goes to his office, he finds people from forensics working for Frank, reviewing the cases Dexter worked on recently. Dexter gets even more nervous and feels they really suspect him and that he's been exposed one way or another. So he decides to act quickly and get rid of all the evidence he has at home, including the body he's hiding in the cabin, the body of the man who killed his mother. As Dexter leaves, he sees Lila at the station sitting with Angel and they seem very close. Dexter realizes Lila is trying to provoke him and fears she might say something to Angel about the man who killed his mother. That's why Dexter is currently going with Angel, Lila and Muska to the casino, so he can keep a very close eye on Lila and understand exactly why she's getting close to Angel. So Dexter sat there watching Lila to make sure she wouldn't talk or do anything suspicious. And indeed, Lila didn't say anything, which made Dexter feel relieved. He then left and went home. When Dexter got home, he went to check the samples from his victims, but was surprised to find they were missing. Of course, Dokes had taken them from the house as we saw before, but Dexter didn't know about Dokes' involvement. He figured Frank was the one who found them, and now Frank might accuse him of being the killer and expose him. But before Dexter could think more about what to do, some federal agents showed up at his house and told him Frank wanted to see him immediately. Dexter was extremely scared. When he got to Frank's office, Frank had a box full of blood samples in front of him. Dexter decided he would confess everything, But before he could say a word, Frank told him those samples were found in Dokes's car, and that Dokes had traveled out of the country. This made Dexter feel much better, like he had escaped a huge disaster. The surprise here was that Frank actually wanted Dexter to analyze the samples himself, and that's why he brought him in. Frank then asked Dexter why Dokes was always following him. Dexter quickly thought and said that Dokes was suspicious of him, and was trying to set him up. This only increased Frank's suspicion of Dokes, and Dexter felt like he'd won this round. Now Frank suspects Dokes is the killer, and that he was just watching Dexter to frame him for the crime. The biggest sign that Frank thinks Dokes is the criminal is that Frank decided to assign a whole team to protect Dexter, including having Dokes kept away from him. This really annoyed Dexter because now he couldn't move freely or do what he wanted. But Dexter decided to deal with the situation his own way until he could find a solution. After Dexter finished working on the samples, he returned home with the team Frank had assigned to him. When they arrived, they told Dexter they would keep a close watch on the place from a distance to protect him. Dexter thanked them, then went inside. As soon as he got in, he grabbed a small bag from the back of the house, snuck out without anyone seeing, and headed to his boat. He went to the cabin where his mother's killer's body was, took the body and went to dispose of it in the ocean as he always does. But just as he was about to do this, Dokes suddenly appeared out of nowhere, pointed a gun at Dexter, and told him he had discovered his samples and was going to take them to be analyzed to confirm he was the killer. But Dokes's mistake was that he left the samples in his car, which made Frank think Dokes was the killer. Dokes had planned to get the samples back after meeting his friend at the lab, but unfortunately Frank found them first. So now, everything was pointing at Dokes. But Dokes shot Dexter in the leg, and despite the injury, Dexter managed to grab him, throw him in the water and choke him until he lost consciousness. After a while, when Dokes woke up, he found himself tied up in the same cabin, surrounded by a lot of drugs, which belonged to Dexter's mother's killer. By the way, that cabin was his, and he always hid the drugs he was dealing there. Anyway, before Dokes could think of anything else, Dexter was standing in front of him. Dokes tried to talk to him and said he wouldn't stay quiet about this, but Dexter left him there and went out to think about what to do with Dokes. After a while, Dexter came back to the cabin after finishing his thoughts, and Dokes was still locked up with nothing changed. This made Dexter feel a little better, knowing he wouldn't act rashly until he decided what to do with him. At the same time, Dexter started analyzing himself and thinking out loud in front of Dokes. Dokes asked him what he planned to do with him. Dexter said he hadn't made a final decision yet, so he would stay there until he figured it out. This made Dokes lose his temper and tell Dexter to either kill him or let him go, but not to leave him like that. Dexter acted as if he didn't hear anything and left without responding, going home through the window as usual so the security wouldn't see him. No one noticed, and Dexter started thinking seriously because he felt Dokes was innocent and didn't deserve to be killed. While he was thinking, Dexter heard a knock at the door. He opened it and found Rita and Ava, so he let them in and it seemed things were starting to get better between them. The next day, Dexter went to work and attended a meeting with Frank and the rest of the team. After the meeting, Dexter asked Frank to remove the security detail because he couldn't live his life with them around. Frank agreed, even though he was hesitant. Later, Deborah came to Dexter and yelled at him for removing the security, worried that Dokes might come and hurt Dexter or even her. But Dexter reassured her, saying Dokes wouldn't do anything to him and on the other hand, Dokes was still in the cabin. Suddenly, he heard a phone ringing and discovered it was the phone of Dexter's mother's killer, which Dexter had forgotten there. Dokes tried to get it using his shoe but couldn't reach it. At that moment, Dexter arrived at the cabin, so Dokes quickly threw his shirt over the phone to hide it so Dexter wouldn't find it. Dexter entered and started talking to Dokes, telling him he had spent the whole day thinking and finally decided he had to kill him. He took out his tools to start getting rid of Dokes. Dokes got very scared, but Dexter handed him a bottle of water to calm him down. Dokes drank it and then tried to convince Dexter to let him go, but Dexter didn't listen or care. Then the killer's phone rang. When Dexter heard the phone, he went to check it, found the phone, and saw a message from someone asking the killer to come pick up the drugs. Dexter was worried that this person might know the location of the cabin and come there, discovering what Dexter was doing. So Dexter decided to find another solution. Dokes passed out from the effect of the drug Dexter had put in the water earlier. But instead of killing Dokes after drugging him, Dexter put all his tools in Dokes' hands so his fingerprints would be on them. Then Dexter took those tools and threw them in the water, hoping the police would find them and think Dokes was the real killer. The next day, Dexter went to work and met Angel, who told him his daughter from his ex-wife was coming to visit him and he was looking for a place to take her out. Dexter suggested they go to the beach together. He is with Rita and her kids, so Angel agrees, and Dexter asks him not to mention Lila at all in front of Rita to avoid any problem. Angel agrees, And by the way, Lila goes to meet him, and he tells her that they're going to the beach and she can't come with them. Lila gets upset, but she doesn't say anything. After that, Dexter goes to see Dokes, and Dokes starts talking to him about Harry, his adoptive father, telling him that he knows dangerous information about his death. Dexter is surprised because he thought Harry died of heart disease, but Dokes tells him that's not true and refuses to say anything else unless he's let out of the cabin. Dexter refuses and leaves him. Then he goes to meet Officer Matthews, who was very close to Harry, and asks him about the reason for Harry's death. Matthews tells him the truth, which is that Harry killed himself by taking a large amount of pills. Dexter is shocked because he never imagined Harry could do that or commit suicide, and he starts to suspect that he himself is the reason for Harry's suicide. When Harry saw him killing, he was terrified, broke down, and couldn't go on, so he decided to end his life. A little later, Dexter goes with Angel, Rita, and the kids to the beach, and they really enjoy their time and have a change of atmosphere. Then Dexter leaves to go to Dokes, but before he arrives, he gets a new message from the same person who previously texted the phone of his mother's killer, saying that he's coming to the cabin to get the drugs. Dexter realizes that this person is a drug dealer who knows the location of the cabin because he used to get drugs from the man who killed Dexter's mother. Dexter decides to kill him since he's a drug dealer, a criminal, and definitely deserves to die, and also so he doesn't expose Dexter. After a while, we see Dexter go to the cabin and kill the drug dealer, telling Dokes that he's going to kill him and then hand both Dokes's and the dealer's bodies to the police, so the whole crime will fall on Dokes. Dokes gets scared and tries to convince Dexter not to do it, begging him to change his mind, but Dexter doesn't listen and starts killing the man in front of Dokes. Even though Dokes is a cop and is used to seeing such scenes, he can't handle it, turns away from the scene, and sits on the ground with his back to what's happening. After Dexter finishes, Dokes tells him he's crazy and to stay away from him. Dexter then remembers a moment from the past when Harry first saw him killing. This scene disgusted and terrified Harry, and he died shortly after. Now Dexter realizes he's the reason for Harry's death because Harry couldn't handle what he saw and decided to escape it all by committing suicide. Dexter is very sad because he loved Harry deeply and didn't know he was the reason for his death. At the same time at Lila's house, she's with Angel as usual, and asks him where Dexter and Rita are. He tells her that they're getting much closer than before, which makes her angry. She takes some pills and passes out from their effect. Angel hears her, runs to her, and finds her unconscious, so he calls an ambulance. We understand that Lila probably tried to kill herself because Dexter left her, which also confirms she's crazy, and we still don't know what she'll do next. Dexter returns still at the cabin with Dokes, and Dokes keeps trying to talk to him and convince him to turn himself in, saying everything can be fixed, so Dexter decides he must face things, and go immediately. Dexter is surprised, leaves Dokes in the cabin as he is, and goes to the hospital to see what's going on. When Dexter arrives at the hospital, he meets a doctor who tells him that Lila claims Angel gave her drugs and assaulted her, and that she's going to file an official case against him even though none of this happened. Dexter doubts her story, especially since he knows Angel very well and knows he wouldn't do something like that. So he decides to talk to Lila himself. There Lila tells him she set Angel up to get Dexter to come, and says she has two options. Either Dexter comes back to her, or she'll continue with the case against Angel and ruin his future. Dexter gets angry, tells her she's crazy, and that nothing in the world will make him go back to her. He tells her to stay away from him and all his friends, then leaves her without another word. He's confused and doesn't know how to help Angel, whose future is at risk. Dexter goes to work and finds a new man from Washington named Max Gee, who is from the feds and outranks Frank by a lot. He came specifically to handle the Dokes case, which makes Dexter nervous and feel he needs to find a solution quickly before Max gets involved. Then two officers come and arrest Angel after Lila filed an official complaint, carrying out her threat, which drives Dexter crazy because he feels responsible for everything happening to everyone around him. He decides he will find a solution soon, starting by getting rid of Dokes and Lila, and we'll see how he does all this later. Meanwhile, Dokes is trying with all his strength to open the cage he's locked in. He tries very hard until he finally manages to open it and escapes from the cabin quickly. But now Dokes finds that the road is very long and that it will take a lot of time to get anywhere, and Dexter might arrive before he makes it. So he decides to run toward the sea, hoping to find a boat to get him out. Indeed, he finds a boat with two people on it, asks for their help, and tells them he is a cop and that someone locked him in the cabin and he needs to get out immediately, because his life is in danger. But it turns out those two are drug dealers, and when they find out he's a cop they quickly beat him up, causing Dokes to lose consciousness. The dealers take him with them and leave. After a while, Dexter returns to the cabin and finds that Dokes has disappeared, but before he can do anything, he sees the two men returning with Dokes. They realize that there might be drugs in the cabin and came back to look for them. After that, they try to finish off Dokes, but their dreams won't come true because Dexter attacks them quickly, knocks them both out, and frees Dokes. But the unfortunate Dokes doesn't even get a chance to be happy, as Dexter immediately and without discussion puts him back in the cave. Dexter then sits with him and talks to him for a long time. In the end, Dexter tells Dokes that he's decided to turn himself in and get rid of all this, but he'll do it the day after tomorrow because there are things he needs to finish first. Dokes agrees and tells him he'll wait for him to keep his promise. After that, Dexter calls Deborah and tells her he needs to meet her very early at the station because there's something very important he needs to tell her. She's surprised but agrees anyway, even though she doesn't understand anything. Meanwhile, Deborah goes to sit with Masuka and Angel at the casino. We find out that Angel still hasn't been sentenced in the Lila case, but his case is ongoing. Deborah sympathizes a lot with him and goes to Frank, asking him to look for Lila, find out more about her, and why she did what she did to Angel. Frank investigates and discovers that Lila has changed her name, is living in the country illegally, and her passport expired a long time ago. Deborah is happy because she finally has a way to keep Lila away from Angel forever, or at least a way to pressure Lila to drop the case. At the same time, Dexter goes to Lila and tells her that he will disappear very soon and she won't see him again, so there's no point in what she's doing with Angel. He asks her to drop the case and leave. Then he goes back to the station and meets Deborah, giving her some papers to sign, telling her that these papers make all his possessions hers, in case he dies or goes to prison. Deborah is of course surprised, and asks him why he's doing this, but Dexter doesn't answer. Of course we understand that Dexter is doing this because he's planning to turn himself in, as he told Dokes. After that, Dexter goes to Rita and her kids, takes them and goes to the marina. There they get on a boat and spend some nice time at sea as a kind of farewell to Rita and the children, since he plans to go to prison and doesn't want to leave them without saying goodbye. Meanwhile, Lila is tracking the addresses on the tracking device to understand exactly what Dexter is doing, and this leads her to the cabin where Dokes is. Before going anywhere, Lila arrives home and Deborah comes to her, telling her to stay away from Dexter and Angel, and that if she stays in the city until tomorrow, she'll report her to immigration and they'll arrest her with no discussion, since she's living in the city illegally, and knows it well. Lila stays silent and agrees with Deborah, who leaves without another word. After that, Lila checks the tracking device records and finds the place Dexter was going to, the cabin where Dokes is. She heads there and Dokes hears someone outside, so he starts screaming and asking for help. At this point, Lila realizes immediately that Dexter has someone captive here, but she doesn't go in and stops to think about what to do first. Meanwhile, we see Dexter having dinner with Deborah for the last time, feeling that tomorrow he'll confess and start anew. But suddenly, Deborah gets a call that the police have found Dokes' weapons with his fingerprints on them, meaning Dokes is the killer. Dexter stands in disbelief, realizing that his plan is working as he wanted, and that there's no need for him to turn himself in. He changes his mind and decides to continue with his plan to frame Dokes for everything, making Dokes look guilty in everyone's eyes instead of Dexter, who would remain free. But in the middle of all this, Deborah gets a call from Frank that they found one of Dokes' cars and are going to inspect it. She leaves Dexter and rushes off. Dexter on his side decides to quickly go to the cabin and deal with things before the police arrive, because if anyone sees Dokes locked up, they'll know someone locked him up to frame him, and that could destroy Dexter completely. At that exact moment, Lila had already decided to enter the cabin. As soon as Lila walked in, she found Dokes in front of her all of a sudden. Of course, she had no idea who he was, didn't know he was a cop, and even Dokes himself didn't know she had any connection to Dexter at all. He tells her his name is Dokes, that he's a cop, and that Dexter is the one who locked him up in there and that he wants to kill him because he exposed all his secrets. Dokes asks Lila to help him and set him free. Lila then asks him why Dexter would do all this, and Dokes tells her that he discovered Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher, and Dexter wants to keep it all hidden from the police. That's why he locked him up and decided to get rid of him. At that moment, Lila thinks about it and decides not to help Dokes, feeling she can't let Dexter get caught or exposed. She decides to do something even crazier. She opens the gas canister in the cabin, sets the place on fire, and leaves Dokes inside as the cabin burns. Lila walks out, having done what she did, showing she really is insane, maybe even more of a killer than Dexter himself. Afterwards, Dexter arrives, originally planning to kill Dokes himself so he wouldn't be exposed. But now, Dexter finds the cabin burned down and of course is happy. He convinces himself the fire happened on its own, that no one was behind it, and since Dokes is dead, everything is fine. But the problem is, there's still no body. They keep searching until they finally find it in the lake in front of the cabin, because the explosion was so strong it threw the body all the way there. With confirmation of Dokes's death, Dexter decides to live his life again as if everything is over. He goes to Rita, makes up with her, and they get back together, maybe even better than before. Then Dexter goes to work as usual with Masuka, examining the items collected from the cabin where Dokes died. Among those things, Dexter finds his GPS device, which Lila forgot there. By chance, Dexter remembers he had left that device in his car, so with a bit of thinking, he realizes Lila was the one who found Dokes's location and killed him. He concludes that Lila also knows his secret, and is a killer, so Dexter decides he must get rid of her before she exposes him. Dexter goes to meet her at a place she chose, and she tells him she's not afraid of him, that she can meet him here just fine. Lila then tells him she knows the truth about him, that he's a killer, and that she helped him by killing Dokes. She doesn't see it as wrong. On the contrary, she's happy she helped him with such a big problem. Then Lila asks Dexter to run away with her, and in return she won't expose him. Dexter realizes she's not normal, and this isn't the first time she's killed. Dexter pretends he loves her and they agree to run away together the next day. But Dexter is only doing this to prepare a way to get rid of Lila for good. The next day, Dexter gets ready with all his killing tools and sedatives, and goes to Lila's apartment. But the unpleasant surprise is that he doesn't find her. While Dexter searches for her in the house, he realizes Lila has left the city and won't harm anyone. He tells Deborah he came for the same reason. They wait for Lila to return so they can force her to leave the city. After a while, Lila arrives. When she gets there, Deborah talks to her and asks her to leave and never come back. Deborah also tells her at that moment that she and Dexter came specifically to tell her that. Lila is surprised, and even more surprised when she sees the bag and realizes Dexter brought his tools to kill her. So Lila takes the bag and leaves. Of course, Dexter can't say anything, because if he admits it's his bag, Deborah would discover everything and things would blow up, which is exactly what he doesn't want, so he keeps quiet. After that, Lila opens the bag and finds sedatives and weapons, so she realizes he really intended to kill her as she suspected. She goes crazy and decides to take revenge on Dexter in the hardest way. So what does she do? Simply, Lila goes to Rita's house, where the babysitter is with Cody and Astor, but Rita isn't there because she's at work. The important thing is, Lila drugs the babysitter, takes the kids, and leaves. At the same time, Dexter goes to the station because Matthews called him. When Matthews sees him, he tells him that Lila called and said she knows who the Bay Harbor butcher is, and will turn him in if Dexter doesn't help her. Dexter realizes Lila did all this to distract him from something she's doing. But what is? Dexter thinks for a bit, and realizes she must have gone for Rita's kids. Dexter and Rita rush to Rita's house, and find the babysitter just waking up from being drugged, and she tells them someone drugged her, and took the kids. When they don't find the kids, they're sure crazy Lila kidnapped. They go to Lila's place, and find the kids sitting there watching TV. Nothing happened to them, as Lila was waiting for Dexter. Suddenly, Lila appears and tells him she loved him and will miss him, then sets the house on fire and runs away. Dexter breaks the window, gets the kids out, but can't get out the same way because it's too small, so he goes to the door, breaks it, and escapes through the fire. At that moment, Deborah arrives, coming to check on him after Rita told her. When she finds Dexter safe, she calls the ambulance, and they treat his burns and small injuries. Deborah tells Dexter she wants to find Lila, but Dexter tells her not to bother, because Lila has surely fled the country after what she did. And indeed, a few days later, Lila arrives in France, intending to start a new life there. But as soon as she enters the house, she's surprised to find Dexter waiting for her. He drugs her and kills her with a knife, just as he likes to do, and that's the end of Lila, who was a real danger to him. Dexter returns to America free. He attends Dokes's funeral, which no one attends except Maria, his family and Dexter, because of course, everyone thinks Dokes was the Bay Harbor butcher, so no one wanted to attend the funeral of a serial killer, which upsets Dexter a lot, because for once he feels he wronged Dokes. But as usual, he quickly forgets all that, and then buys a new box to them. If you liked today's video, don't forget